On mic today, we have Benjamin T. Wilson. How are you doing today, good sir?
I am doing all right. Thanks for having me.
I am glad to have you here. I looked over your stuff, and the more I look at it, the more I like it. It's like, this is a dude I definitely want to be talking to because you are, like myself, a giant sci-fi geek, but you've actually gone so far as to make your own sci-fi. So I really want to talk about that.
Cool. Let's talk about it then.
Okay, so this movie you made, how far along is it? Is it ready to go? Is it ready for
So,
release?
is this my feature you're asking about,
Yes.
Galatea?
Mhm.
Galatea, it's done. It's ready to release. It's going to be premiering at the Austin Revolution Film Festival this upcoming March. Well, God willing, coronavirus and makes everything a little uncertain, but they're pretty sure they're holding their date. So I believe it's the weekend of March 21st through the 23rd. We'll be premiering down in Austin.
Fantastic. And Austin is one of my favorite towns in the world, so you picked a good choice.
Yeah, I've a couple of my shorts over the years have played at this festival, and it's a special one. So we, myself, my producer partner, and myself, really wanted to premiere the film there. So we're very excited to be doing so.
So tell me about the film. What's it like conceptually?
So it's a retelling of the Greek myth of Pygmalion and Galatea, which the short version of it for your viewers who might be unfamiliar with it are Pygmalion's a guy in a small town and he can't find a girlfriend. He can't find a his words not mine, a virtuous woman in his whole town. So he does, the logical thing and he sculpts one out of ivory because he's a sculptor. And then he does the next logical thing and just starts treating this inanimate statue like it's his girlfriend. And then one night during the festival, the feast day for Aphrodite, he goes to her temple and offers some prayers. And one of the main prayers being, okay, help me find somebody just like her. And Aphrodite decides to go down to the workshop and see what he's talking about. And she's so impressed by the realism and the beauty of the sculpture, which of course is in her image, that she brings it to life, and Pygmalion and his statue get to live happily ever after together. So what I do is I kind of update the story for the modern time. Galatea is no longer a sculpture; she is an artificial intelligence, and my story does not end with brought to life happily ever after. There's a lot more going on. So, but that's conceptually most of the story revolves around the character Jesse, who's kind of the Pygmalion stand-in, building this artificial intelligence throughout the movie, and kind of the developing relationship between him, another human character who's helping him with that, and of course the titular Galatea herself.
All right. Now, there's a whole lot to unpack here, and
Yes, there is.
You're one of the guests who's ever brought up Greek mythology on here, and for that, I thank you. Because when it comes to science fiction, I like to go right back to the beginning and say, look, the very first stories we ever told were fantastic stories. They were stories out of the imagination.
Yeah.
So there's something to that. There's a reason people want to tell these kinds of stories. What was your reason?
Well, I think I've said this, on other platforms before, but my thing, if you will, my kind of niche in storytelling that I've come to enjoy is I really, really like telling human stories through non-human means. I think for some reason, and I've never fully figured out why this is, but I find it easiest to get to the heart of characters and kind of find their humanity when they're not human. I have short films about like little robots. I have short films about actually lots of little robots. There's one that's just about a robot. There's one that's about a smart assistant, like a Google Home or Alexa or something, and having those types of characters as my protagonists has just kind of become my thing. So Galatea is the type of thing I've wanted to do a human and some sort of robot type story for a long time, and so I feel like I've been chasing that film for a while. But yeah, that just tends to be my niche, is the humanity part of it. Does that answer your question?
It does, and I mean I'm kind of building on that in my head there. It's like you're saying that it's easier to find the humanity in somebody when they're not human. I think we, as the audience, tend to have a little bit of guilt when it comes to some of these characters because we're entertained by seeing them go through pain and suffering, and part of us don't want to see that happen to an actual person. So if it's not an actual person, that kind of throws us off our guard a little bit.
I feel like writers and creators do that to an extent as well. I feel like the ultimate part of that is like for kids shows, right? How kids shows that are about superheroes or something, they want to have violence in it because it's a superhero show, but it's a kids show, so you can't be violent against humans, so you make all the bad guys robots.
Mm-hmm.
Which is a good workaround. But yeah, it's also fun because things that we or human characters would take for granted, robot characters or AI characters or other types of sci-fi characters don't always. There's very often a naivety or a self-awareness to certain aspects of their let's say their emotional palette or their place in society or what have you. And so that can often lead to more, maybe not, or maybe more natural, but at least more obvious roots for their insecurities. And insecurities obviously are where we find a lot of character and character growth in stories.
Very true. And you have to hit the character where they're weakest. I'm thinking somebody who can't find himself a virtuous woman, doesn't have access to eHarmony, is probably going to go ahead and not be all that self-secure.
Yeah, well, I leave out the virtuous woman part for the most part. He's not in my movie. He's not searching just because no one's good enough. He's much just more of the antisocial type. The insecurity thing I was just talking about, though, definitely comes into play because, so to tell you a little bit more about the way we develop the movie, is the artificial intelligence itself is based off of a human template, if you will. What he basically does is he builds the mechanics for the brain, the physical, like, this is a functional brain, I just need to fill it with something. And then they use a real human and they kind of have her go through different emotional states and let the AI kind of read that and scan that and then start to build itself off of that. So that results in the artificial intelligence actually getting these kinds of insecurities and wondering, as she says in the movie, how much of me is my own, because she's trying to figure out where does the line between what I'm copying from this real girl end and then where do my true self begin. And I think it's really fun to see kind of an identity crisis like that in a non-human character.
And you're looking at an identity crisis that a lot of people are going to get at some point in their lives, maybe multiple times in their lives. Because, we're even people who are just born in the old-fashioned way are the conglomeration of the DNA and experiences and upbringing of dozens of people.
Yeah, and you see that kind of thing when somebody has, like, say, a falling out with this might be a simplistic example, but like a fandom, somebody who's really into some sort of cultural phenomenon or a band or something, and then something happens, either a bad entry in the franchise comes out, or the band members all break up and turns out they hate each other or something, and then you see this person who built so much of their identity on, I am a fan of this, or I am a part of this community. When that community falls apart, there's this, man, when you take away the surface level of this, what of me is left? Like, so I do think, and I think there's plenty of other examples like that, but yeah, there's definitely, it's definitely a human thing, which again is where I find the fun in it.
I'm listening to you talk about the story, and I love the idea of it. I can't wait to see it. I'm curious how much of a fan of Weird Science you are.
I've not really watched it much, to be honest. I am one of those people who, and some of your viewers may find this very frustrating, there are authors I enjoy reading who talk about how they don't read. And they and you're like, wait, how can you be a writer if you don't read? And they're like, well, it's a completely different process. I'm kind of that way when it comes to a lot of sci-fi stuff. I enjoy making it a lot more than I tend to consume. Not that I don't enjoy consuming sci-fi, but I've just noticed that it's the type of thing I prefer making over consuming.
Fair enough. There are some parallels and some extreme differences between the two, and I was just wondering if at any point you wrestled with those in your heads.
Yeah, I mean, you're always, anytime I think you're telling an artificial intelligence story, there's going to be at least 3 or 4 examples that you can like overlap, and some of them, like Ex Machina or something, I could say, yes, I took inspiration from that. And others, I'm like, I'm glad I haven't seen it.
Yeah, and I really think that you're probably better off. I mean, I love the show. The movie is fairly good. I'm one of the few people that likes the show more than the movie. I will die on this hill, okay? But yeah, in this case, you would want to have your own spin on it. You'd want to have your own vision, and it looks like you have that.
Yeah, and everything to some point obviously is derivative, but I mean, I do enjoy trying to be original where I can. Maybe not so much in narrative, but at least in adding my own voice or in this movie's case, my own color palette or my own style and stuff. And yeah, I think that's kind of where the differentiation becomes what we look for.
So what made you want to get into creativity and filmmaking? What was the thing that made you say, I'm going to grab that camera, I'm going to pick up that pen?
I was 14, and a buddy of mine who I'm happy to say I still work with today. I'll shout out Peter J.S. Regan, another great filmmaker. He had just shot a school project, a little film for his school, and he didn't have a way to edit it. And my family had just gotten our first like family computer, like an iMac that came with iMovie, and I'd always wanted to. When I was young, I did the classic playing with the DV tape video camera and stuff, but I'd never edited anything. So he brought the footage over, and we spent 13 hours straight editing, like without looking up. We were just going for it. And when we finally looked at the clock and realized how long we'd been doing this, how much fun we were still having, how much energy we still have, that was kind of the moment where I realized, oh, this might be something I actually want to do.
Well, you were at the magic age there. I mean, it's that 12, 13, 14 into the 15-year span. It's like you finally have something that resembles an adult brain in you, but you have that childlike fascination. Yeah. So your focus becomes like a laser beam for possibly the only time in your life.
Yeah, and it was funny because I throughout the rest of like high school and stuff, we would make films in the backyard. We make music videos was actually the thing we'd make for a while. I had a couple friends who really, one guy really liked playing with lights, one guy really liked playing with cameras, and we would just get all these lights and stuff together and get some instruments and have like a fake band, and we'd just do like a lip sync music video to some song. I was TikTok ahead of its time. But I always I was never sure until I got to college if I was going to go after it solely as a career. I remember in high school talking about like dual majoring maybe in like, something practical like business and then something like film. But then by the time I started applying to colleges and seeing, kind of how the major programs were broken down, I basically decided to just all in it for film. And I'm glad I did because it's the thing that I love doing.
The practicum on the film program is huge. It's very hard to split that up between anything else. I know a few people that did it. I consider them cautionary tales.
Well, and it's also, it's just why bother, filling up half your time with something you're not actually interested in. And it's also, I found, ironically, it was when I got to college, it was the one thing I'm actually kind of good at, So it made perfect sense to actually go for it as a career. It wasn't even just a pure, most people think of it when you're going for an artistic endeavor, it's like a pure pipe dream. But for me, I'm like, no, I'm not really good at many other things. So I really do need to figure out how to make money doing this.
And the stories you get on a student film set in college are stories that those are classic college stories that so many people don't even get.
Oh, I gotta say, man, there was this one semester where everyone in the class wrote the same script without telling each other, and it was one of the funniest things I've ever seen. We all wrote some variation on they were dead the whole time character was a ghost thing. And I remember every one of us came into that class thinking, oh man, I got the coolest twist. No, like you're never gonna, this is such a cool idea. And then one by one, we all read our scripts and realized we had done the exact same thing.
Everybody saw The Sixth Sense and thought they could be the next guy.
I guess, man. I don't know if that's what it was. It was just so funny how almost the entire class did it in the same. It was yeah. But yeah, I loved going to college for it.
Okay. Did you ever have trouble getting people to be in your student films?
In my student films, yeah, just because I went to college in a fairly small town, so our acting pool was very limited, to say the least. Most people just had their boyfriend or girlfriend as their lead. We had a couple pretty dedicated theater actors, and I would usually try to pull from that pool. Um, but that was just the main difficulty, was the limitations of how few people lived in our town. Uh, Coming out of it and seeing student films done now where I live in Pittsburgh, um, I rarely see people have trouble finding actors. If you put out a casting call, you'll almost always find somebody.
I have to admit that question was a little bit selfish because I went to a school with a very large theater program, a very significant TV program, and you would think that that would mean that the TV people would have a steady supply of actors ready to go, wanting that extra practice. And for reasons I can never explain, that never seemed to be the case.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah. Never hasn't been my experience.
yeah.
Everywhere I've gone, there's been people willing to be in movies. People love being in movies. That's funny.
I
I
always
wonder
enjoyed it, but it's a
wonder what they were
different
too
world
good
now.
for.
It's a different world now, though, because I'm guessing you were like early 2000s, late 90s in college at the time.
No, I graduated from college just 2 or 3 years ago. I graduated
Oh,
in
really?
2016. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So I'm sorry. I pegged just being a hair more experienced and whatnot. But see, when I went, independent film was not. It was just hitting its stride. Kevin Smith had just become a name. Uh, Things like the Blair Witch Project were big news for the first time ever. So
Yeah.
this was something that most people didn't have their head around yet.
Yeah, it's funny. I was in there. I don't know if this was just my college being a few years behind, but I was in right as they were making the full switch to digital, because I know a lot of educational institutions, at least on the college side. I don't know about film school, but a lot of educational institutions were very, very hesitant to embrace the digital age. So I spent my first 2 years shooting on mini DV tape, and then my last two shooting on digital. Um, that's funny though, because Kevin Smith and Blair Witch Project are still like the go-to names when you're pitching a film. They're still some of the go-to examples of, look at these independent guys, look how they did it, you know. I actually visited the Clerk's convenience store out in Leonardo, New Jersey, not too long ago.
Nice.
Yeah.
I never got out that way. It's just always a hair longer than I had time for that particular day. I know it's a landmark and I should go.
It's so funny too, because it's such a small town environment that you'll be pegged as a tourist instantly. Like I have family out in Jersey, and I was going to a show down in Asbury Park, and it was pretty much right on the way. So me and my buddy stopped off, and we didn't want to walk around and be like, oh, Clerks, you know. We just kind of walked in and, you know, got a drink, and we're trying to be very casual about it. And we get up to the front counter, and instantly the woman at the front counter is like, oh, so you guys are Clerks fans, huh? And we're like, how'd you know? She goes, because I know everybody that comes in here, and you don't come in here.
Fair enough.
Yeah, it's funny.
Clerks is going to keep them in business for the rest of her life.
Oh,
So yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, and it's so funny because we talked to a few people as we were leaving, and everyone there just says, oh yeah, good old Kevin, we all knew him, you know, off doing bigger things now.
So I mean, I can't say I've done that, but what I have done. Are you a fan of the movie UHF
I don't think I've seen that one.
with Weird Al Yankovic?
No.
Okay.
I'm a fan of Weird Al Yankovic, though.
Okay. It was shot in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Okay.
I have been up there many, many, many times. I know the area well, and I have found almost every shooting location from that movie.
Very nice.
And I can go there and say, hey, that's where they taught poodles how to fly. And it's fun. The first one I ever hit was where they filmed the scene at the place called Big Edna's Burger World, which was a catfish place at the time. And pulled in. I guess they were closed, but the owner was there sweeping up and cleaning and looked at me like I was going to rob the place. Just gave me that big eye, asked like, what the heck are you doing here? We're closed. And I'm like, I'm sorry. I don't know if you knew this, but there was a movie made here about 15 years ago, 20 years ago, something like that. And I just want to take a couple pictures of, yeah, you're not the first one.
Did maybe you'll know? I know a lot of the new Watchmen show was set in Tulsa. Did they actually shoot it there?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
Um, yeah, that was. I don't know where they shot it, but I don't believe I saw any production in Tulsa at the time. It wouldn't really make any sense because since it was much earlier, Tulsa doesn't look very much like it did at that point in time. So it really would be very beneficial to try to shoot it on site.
Yeah. There's a lot of restaurants I feel like that get some of their business. There's actually, ironically, before I was even a big Kevin Smith fan, there's a little Mexican restaurant very close to where I grew up that I worked at for several years. And over the one table is a Dogma poster because it's where they shot the scene where Alan Rickman takes the lead character down to Mexico for a brief aside in that movie. It's just funny. I seem to be stalking Kevin by accident.
Well, it's very hard not to. The guy puts himself everywhere.
He does. I've always liked that about him.
I mean, when he did his road shows and would tour around doing live podcasts and stuff, I mean, it was just, he was very accessible to his fans. And I think he, in some ways, paved the way for the social media model of filmmaking and celebrity.
Yeah. There's a documentary a friend of mine working on called Chasing Amy. Sav Rogers, he's a real talented filmmaker. And Kevin, from what I've seen, they've actually been able to interact and stuff, and he's been very supportive of the making of the process and whatnot. So I don't know. I really enjoy the small town story like that and not losing that accessibility despite a long and varied career.
Well, I think you're starting to speak to the fact that Hollywood as a geographic location is becoming less and less relevant over time. The businesses that are there, the people that are there are relevant, but the need to actually physically be there to be creative is less and less important as each day goes on.
Yeah, it's been very fascinating to watch that because to an extent, yes, absolutely. You've seen production pick up in smaller towns you might not have expected. Like here in Pittsburgh, there's been, Netflix has a heavy presence here. They shot Batman here. Actually, I was in Stillwater, Oklahoma a couple years back, and they were talking about all the productions coming through, Oklahoma and place, Atlanta obviously was picking up really big. Seattle has a big scene, and because of, advancements in technology and stuff, it's so much more accessible for people. But at the same time, there still is this centralization to Hollywood that I think has more to do almost with tradition and less to do with geography, in the sense that most of the productions I just mentioned in all these other places still are LA productions. They're still based out of LA. And the weird thing is the new media market seems to have reflected that in terms of geography. Like if you want to be a YouTuber or if you want to be like a TikTok star or whatever, and you kind of hit that point where you're ready to start attacking it as a career, most of the time you got to go to LA, because that's where, even though YouTube you'd think is the kind of thing, the cool thing about it is that anyone can do it from their bedroom, the market is still in LA. Your peers are out there, your managers are out there, the advertisers are out there. So it's just so interesting to me that as we've developed to have less and less of the need to go to LA, you still got to go to LA eventually.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, that there's always going to be that last mile that you have to go. I'm just thinking back, and maybe I'm thinking a little too long term. I mean, there was a time that if you didn't spend every waking minute there, your career was going nowhere.
Sure. Well, because for a while, it was as simple as that's where the cameras and the actors were.
And so what are you doing from here on out after this movie's ready to go?
Oh, I mean, just continuing. So I obviously, not to sound like a broken record or like I'm copying half of Hollywood, but everyone kind of just got put on pause this year. We just all kind of had to. I was supposed to have some other. I've been working on the pivot from short form stuff to long form stuff. Short films for the festival track, more now to feature films. And I was supposed to be doing a little more of that this year, but obviously, productions had to be paused and delayed and shut down. So So yeah, we'll be debuting the film in March. We'll hopefully be getting it picked up for distribution sometime before or after that. And then for me, it's honestly it's on to the next one. I have some new media ambitions as well. I might actually be venturing into the podcast world a little bit, just because it's something I've found that I enjoy doing. But for the most part, it's just making the next feature. And I had one that was lined up, but we're gonna have to see how the world settles to see if it's that or a different one. But yeah, I that's the main thing for me is just keep making projects.
You absolutely should start a podcast. I mean, the way you're able to wrap your head around these conversations, you've got a lot of insight that I think would be really useful. And
Oh, thank you.
I really think anybody who wants to start one should one.
Yeah, it's very accessible. That's some of the joy of it. I've done some tests with some friends and co-hosts and stuff, and the actual process of making them I find very fun. I always enjoy being on them, so I was always like, oh, this might be something that that could be a fun endeavor. But and again, like I said, I feel like I've been so much of my career in the classic filmmaking world. I really do want to dip my toes into the more modern waters and kind of see what that market's like as compared to the one that I'm more familiar with, which is, the festival track.
What I find interesting about it is kind of one of the better products of the Web 1.0 era before social media took over.
Yeah.
When personal web pages were the big thing, when chat rooms were more text based, podcast kind of came out of that tradition where you don't really have to give your content to any big corporation. You just get it out there and people who want to go get it.
And it's so funny that it has kind of circled back to that because, like you said, that was, there just didn't used to be the bandwidth to make a show on something like YouTube. Podcasts were not only the thing, they were the practical thing if you wanted some sort of show. And I find it really, really funny how, we got so far from that only to come right back to it, because podcasts are still some of the biggest things out there. Like you were saying earlier, I mean, like how Joe Rogan's show is one of the most like influential just media things that there is. And most of the big media figures, have just, podcasts on YouTube or podcasts on all the platforms. So it's, I mean, I think YouTube noticed it a few years ago when they pivoted towards prioritizing watch time in minutes over completing videos, that long form content is kind of the thing humanity wants for whatever reason. Like, it seems almost counterintuitive from a marketing perspective to say like, oh man, who's going to want to listen to people talk for 2.5 hours? No one's going to have time to watch that, but people do. People will consume it. They like the long form type. So yeah,
Well,
podcasts are cool.
I'm talking to an independent filmmaker. I'm talking to a guy who writes scripts based on Greek mythology and who wants to look at the nitty gritty of making stuff. You're going to get this. Some people won't get this, but you will get this. People are ready to be challenged. People are ready to be taken seriously. The audience is tired of being told they're stupid. And they were told they were stupid for a very long time by the big companies.
Sure. I don't think people enjoy feeling like they're being told they're stupid. But I also feel like there is definitely an inclination towards gravitating towards what you want to hear. Like that's why if you look in like the comments of like YouTube movie reviewers or something, so I believe, like, this is just a random personal philosophy of me, but the value of a critic is in the consistency of their voice, right? So if you've got a movie reviewer who is one of those like super, I hate superhero movie types, only give me the artistic French new wave films types, and then they say that they don't like a superhero movie, you're like, all right, that's par for the course. It might still be an okay movie. But they say they watch the latest Marvel movie or something and they say this was a fantastic movie. Well, then that's the greatest movie ever made, because they hate those movies and they said that movie. But anyway, all that being said, people don't seem to look for critics with consistent voices. They seem to look for critics that agree with them on on taste and whatnot, which isn't always a bad thing. But like, I don't know if people are as averse to being told that they're stupid as they are averse to being told that they're wrong.
That's a good point. That is a very good point. There's a certain necessity of being willing to be wrong in order to be taken seriously.
Yeah, no, 100%, 100%. I think that's incredibly true, and I think that's where the people that are willing to listen to the things that challenge them is such an important thing and such a good thing, and I love that. That's why I love that kind of content, especially when you have it in kind of a discussion format, when it is like two people who aren't afraid to be wrong discussing something or whatever. But yeah, I don't know. Confirmation bias is I don't want to get too political here, but as we saw this past year, is a scary, scary thing.
Yeah, let me just to take one example from 5 minutes ago, when we were talking about the relevance of Hollywood, and I said I truly believe that in 5 years, the physical location of Los Angeles is going to be considerably less important than it is now. You don't believe that, and that's okay. I still actually want to sit here. I'm going to turn off this recording in a couple minutes, and I'm going to ponder this because you've given me some really cool insight. That doesn't mean I'm going to throw my ideas out, but man, no, I'm excited because you just gave me more to think about, and I thank you for that.
Yeah, and to be honest, I hope you're right, because the more decentralized something like the movie industry becomes, the better it is for independent creators. So I don't nothing against Hollywood necessarily, but like I don't want it all to be centralized there. I want there to be more, because the thing that Hollywood still has, like I said, is the studios and the people that send out the productions. So if you're making movies in Pittsburgh, or if you're making movies in Seattle, you're making movies in Atlanta, most of those productions, most of the core talent are still based out of Hollywood. And I've been, one of the reasons I stayed in Pittsburgh and tried to make movies here is because you don't have homegrown stuff like that. You don't have your Clerks. You don't have, the from the ground up from, Pittsburgh writers and creators and type things out here. So as much as I don't think Hollywood's going to go away anytime soon, just because I think they'll refuse to. I hope you're right. I hope I'm wrong, because I think it'd be better for all of us.
I do too, and I really just think that because I know so many people like you who are very talented, they're very ambitious, they have fresh ideas, but they either aren't in Hollywood or don't want to be in Hollywood. And I know people in Hollywood who want to get the hell out.
Yeah. Yeah, I've always said I'll probably end up there at some point, at least for a bit, just because sometimes you got to go, you got to establish some things, and then you got to come back, and and you can bring that back to whatever small town you want to work in. But I've always also enjoyed just the kind of big fish in a small pond type thing. I find it easier to work that way when I'm not elbowing out too much competition for the same feeding trough, if you will.
Now, I mean, I need to have a very serious conversation with you because from one Pennsylvanian to another, when you leave the state, and I know this, you lose your access to decent pizza and decent cheesesteaks, and you cannot take this seriously enough.
I mean, it depends which direction you go. You can find really good pizza if you go far enough east. But yeah, once you go west, I think you're done.
It's not that it's not there, but you will have to look and you will have to lower your standards a bit.
Yeah, 100. Yeah, like I said, I'm born and raised Pittsburgh, and then most of my family's from Jersey, so I have very high standards for pizza.
I would think so. And I take pizza personally. Bad pizza is, you've hurt me.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna say you've hurt me. Okay, and maybe I will leave it on this because this would be just a great point to make. I went to a certain place. Actually, this is not an uncommon thing. I ordered a pizza. And the waitress says, "Would you like to have ranch dressing on your pizza?"
And did you just turn around and walk away?
Fortunately, it was actually good pizza without it. But the fact that I was even asked made me question my life decisions considerably.
Such an uncivilized time we live in.
It really is. Okay, Ben, so before we wrap up here, where can people find your stuff and where can they check out this movie that's ready to roll?
All right, my website is benjamintothet.com, Benjamin Tothet. You can also follow me on just about every social media platform at that handle, at Benjamin to the T. Except on Facebook, my production company has a page there you can follow at Bit-Sized Productions. I don't know if you need to put the LLC when you search in there, but it's at Bit-Sized Productions. Most most of my films are available for viewing on my website, with the exceptions being the ones that are, we only upload to Facebook, such as our latest 48-hour film project entry. That'll be up on the Bit Size Productions Facebook page. The movie itself, the only public premiere we have lined up is the world premiere at Austin. So if you're in the area or you're within 400-mile radius of it, I highly suggest coming out in March. After that, we're going to have to see where we end up with distribution-wise to see when you'll be able to see the film after that. But yeah.
Okay, well, all that is going to be in the show notes on my website, aaronbossig.com, and this episode is going to be out extremely soon. So if you're getting it right off the feed, go ahead and check that out.
Yeah, if you're listening to it, it definitely was soon.
Okay, Ben, thanks so much. I will see you soon. Looking forward to having you back.
Hey, thanks, Aaron. I'm looking forward to being back.